I was actually a reluctant entrepreneur, I'll add that. I was afraid to leave the comfort of a check and like the, things that you're going to get to the unknown of entrepreneurship.
Yes. And that probably holds a lot of people back.
Yes. So as part of that, I was like, well, I'll stick my foot over here, but I'll also keep my foot here just to kind of like feel like it take baby steps to get to the entrepreneurial journey. So I did that. And it's kind of interesting because at Edelman, we were seeing how PR was evolving and including, bloggers were coming into play, social, all that was still so fairly new. So really being at the forefront of that with Hispanicize, that kind of led us to, create, in addition to the event, an influencer network.
Hello, money movers. We have a very special episode today with a legend in media tech and publications for many years, known around the world, the legendary Angela Sustaita-Ruiz.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here in my home state of all places.
I have just read and heard so many incredible things about you. So excited that you're here. So tell us, about your journey and how everything got started for you.
Well, I'm a native from Waco, Texas. I grew up there, Mexican-American family. My grandfathers were in Austin. So, deep Texas roots. My family's been here over 150 years. Grew up in Waco, very different. I was the little dark-skinned girl on the white soccer team, So, kind of faced the things that as a Mexican-American girl in the 70s would face. I couldn't go into friends' houses because I was a wetback. I had rocks thrown at me and my grandmother when we'd go for a walk because she was too dark. So I experienced all of those things. And I think, I look back on them now and they really helped me to be more resilient. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes, we may be going through challenges in life, but I think ultimately that leads us to be more resilient to cope with what we need to as adults. And then especially as entrepreneurs, it takes a special level of resilience to be successful in whatever it is that you put your mind to. But so grew up in Waco, went to Baylor. I studied Latin American studies because somehow in my head, I was like, I'm going to be in foreign service and I'm going to be, traveling the world and doing these things. But life always has other plans. So that led me to, I didn't do foreign service. I went to Thailand, taught English to kind of get myself together. I kind of, when I was young in my early 20s, I was like, why don't I have everything planned out yet? I think that's one of the things I learned also getting older. And I tell my daughters and young girls, don't feel like you have to have everything planned out and thought out perfectly when you're young. You find your journey as you meet people and you have experiences. So just go through life and those, learning as much as you can. Because ultimately you're going to get where you're supposed to be and where you want to be.
Yes.
So I think that's one of the things I always tell young girls is, just don't get overwhelmed with, why haven't I graduated yet maybe? Or why don't I have a house yet? Why haven't I not married yet? Just go on your own time and just, have fun along the way, I think is what's key. So after Thailand, I ended up working in Dallas at Cinemark in the international corporate offices. So I would travel to Latin America and work in operations primarily, but I kind of started touching marketing. So I did that for a while and then ultimately ended up in New York at Edelman Public Relations, which is a global public relations firm. And, there it was a very different living in New York from Texas, being a Texas girl. But it was really cool. It was a great opportunity to network with all kinds of people from all across the country, worked on really cool campaigns like Unilever, Kraft. I launched, Dalia did a multi-year global partnership with Hershey's, and I launched that in Times Square. So things I never thought
Wow.
it was cool.
Yeah.
I never thought that I would never have had that in my head being a young girl in Waco, that was not even anything that popped in. So I took a chance. I was, they didn't have a job for me, that Edelman, when that first job. A friend of mine was working there. When I called, they said, there's not really any jobs available right now. I said, well, that's okay. I understand. I'm going to be in New York anyway, so I would love to come in and meet you. So they're like, okay. So I went in and met them. Like, this is 2 weeks later. and I left with a job offer. So it's just like they went from like, yeah, we don't have anything to now.
What do you want to do?
When do you want to start? So that's one other thing, and you don't want to be like, you don't need to be overly aggressive about don't take no for an answer, but you never know. It doesn't hurt to ask, and it doesn't hurt, networking and building those personal relationships, I think is so key, to help you find your journey and find the right place for you,
Yes.
So that's something else I like telling people is just, you don't always, no doesn't always mean no in those situations. And during that 2008-9 timing is when you started hearing about bloggers. So I was, as a startup, we were starting Hispanicize, but I was still at Edelman because sometimes as entrepreneurs, you're like I was actually a reluctant entrepreneur, I'll add that. I was afraid to leave the comfort of a check and like those, things that you're going to get to the unknown of entrepreneurship.
Yes. And that probably holds a lot of people back.
Yes. So as part of that, I was like, well, I'll stick my foot over here, but I'll also keep my foot here just to kind of like feel like take baby steps to get to the entrepreneurial journey. So I did that. And it's kind of interesting because at Edelman, we were seeing how PR was evolving and including, bloggers were coming into play, social, all that was still so fairly new. And so really being at the forefront of that with Hispanicize, that kind of led us to, create, in addition to the event, an influencer network. So being able to have this event that was like a mini South by, but for Latino, but then infusing it with influencers. So they would go and then they would do branded campaigns with different sponsor partners. And it really evolved, over 10 years from the influencer network. We made some acquisitions of some online platforms, Hispanic Kitchen and some of the others. And we did that for about 10 years. And it was amazing. It was great, really seeing the space evolve and really by doing that, bringing the brands and the influencers together in that unique setting really paved a way for a lot of them that I still see now. And I'm so proud because we were a part of their journey.
Who are some of those people?
Spoiled Latina is here.
Yeah.
There's Mama Contemporánea out of Dallas. There's more, I could go on and on. But just seeing them and hearing from them that we gave them the opportunity because we provided that connection that a lot of time, people didn't have at the time. They didn't have those relationships with brands. And I think that's so important that whenever we have an opportunity to make those introductions, I love connecting people. And I think that's very natural from my upbringing. But that's something that I think is so important for our community to do, to foster that and see. It helps all of us grow and get to where we're supposed to be and collectively help our community, uplift us all together.
Yes.
So we did this for 10 years. And in 2022, what year are we in now? 2022, there was an acquisition of Hispanicize, and NGL was acquired by Go Digital, which had owned Me Too. So John Leguizamo was part of that company. He was part of that acquisition. They acquired the company. And so we phased out of that. And it was time to move on. Like there are moments I love hearing the stories of Hispanicize, and that may get us to do something else, from storytelling perspective. But, there are times in your journey, sometimes people think maybe doors close on them or an opportunity was taken away or whatever. Sometimes it's time to move on. For us, it was time to move on.
It
but
is.
I remind people, look at it as an opportunity to go do something new. Mm-hmm. And it's, for us, we knew probably that we either would have changed Hispanicize the name, kind of like, you have to always adapt, rebrand. Mm-hmm. But I remind people that there's opportunities in your life for you to take different paths. And so that's how we ended up with Nuestro Stories. It was a very natural transition to all the work we've been doing in the community, because when we created Hispanicize, it was really to elevate our community by giving Latinos a platform to share their stories. Because we know that the stories the media has typically told are not so great.
Yes, they portray us in a completely different light.
Yes.
Always, and stereotypical roles and that's amazing.
That's what we wanted to get away from. And so now through Nuestro Stories, there's a lot of hidden origin stories of all of our collective stories through history. It could be the origins of food, the origins of fashion. So really, leveraging our platform, Nuestro Stories, to produce snackable content that tells these stories, because we have a whole new generation, that's coming into play. And we don't want any of this to be lost, on them. And Simultaneously, I think sometimes people are concerned about, there are groups that want to erase history because they don't agree with it. It's not something that is going to help any of us. So I think really preserving, thinking like a digital Wikipedia meets a Latino museum. That's how, we're curating the content. And so with that, while it's an online platform, we know that content needs distribution. So that's what, taking all the learnings we've had through Hispanicize, seeing how the digital space has evolved, being there at the forefront of it, using a lot of those learnings to be able to amplify this content. So, we do a campaign with McDonald's for the origin stories of Batman, because did you know that the origin stories of Batman were Latino?
No, I didn't.
So again,
I think most of us didn't know that.
No.
Wow.
So it ties back to Zorro and, all these things. So, we did a program with them for their Spotlight Dorado program, which was to help raise awareness about the lack of representation in Hollywood. So that's an example of, we created the content, but then we leveraged our online tech digital, platform or digital distribution to get that content to the people that we wanted to be able to connect with. So, and as tech evolves, especially with media, there's going to be so many other cool ways for us to have those touch points. And even an educational perspective, how do we bring these stories to life through AR? And there's so many cool things now happening that it's going to really open up opportunities for us to get those stories to make us really feel what the stories are,
Yes.
So that's what we were looking to do. And, we also we launched Nuestro Stories as a follow to Hispanicize. And then earlier this year in Los Angeles, we launched Nuestro Studios. And that really is to help us bring together a collective of art, the community, filmmaking community, to work on projects, some short films, some will be longer films, or some in the works already. Obviously, there was a delay because of the strike, but we're excited about, telling stories. And they're not all related to history. There are some that have a positive message or, and just really unique. Again, portraying our community in a way that is positive and inspiring for a whole new generation.
Oh, my gosh. And, our kids need it. The next generation needs to see that, the possibilities are limitless. You can be the president. You can be the CEO, the CFO. Anything is possible. And
yes.
It's time that we tell our stories the right way.
Exactly. And I really think, that, and again, it's just and through this company, I think it, finding ways to uplift and open doors has been something we've always done and will continue to be. I think that's so key for any entrepreneurs. And I think it's also important to note, because we've been talking about all these great things, how Hispanicize has grown and what we're doing with Nuestro Stories, but it's also, as an entrepreneur, it's not always like a bed of roses. There's also the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, and it takes a lot of tenacity sometimes to be able to stick with something, because all kinds of things can come up, and sometimes you may have a great business idea and the timing is off. But that's part of the entrepreneur's journey, is that sometimes things don't work.
Dust yourself off and get right back up again.
Exactly.
It is such a roller coaster ride.
It is. And you just hold your head up. And there are times I was down, like, we're people, right, at the end of the day. And I think being able to acknowledge that that's part of the journey and understand when you may need to get help, I think that's important. And I think we as entrepreneurs should talk about that as well and encourage us to have healthy conversations about mental health, right? What we did do during that pandemic, during May of 2020, we partnered with the Latina Justice, Monica Ramirez, and some of the farm worker justice groups to help raise awareness about the lack of supplies available for farm workers. So we created Altísimo Live. It was May 5th, 2020. And it was May 5th because it was like give 5 on 5, right? Because like any donation amount would help. So we created a one-day virtual event, and it had all the top of the top Latino celebrities. We had some great partners to help bring in all that talent for free to help for a good cause. And it was so beautiful. Like we had Mark Anthony, we had Jennifer Lopez, we had Maná that wrote a special song.
Oh, wow.
And it was just like so many artists. And it was all donating their time and their talents to a great cause. And so we ultimately helped raise, it was almost $2 million for the farm workers over, not in that one day, but over time. And just raising awareness, using our platforms and our connections and the resources we had to help raise awareness about the group that was so overlooked and not talked about,
Angela, you and Manny are extraordinary people.
We try.
So selfless and giving and generous and really standing behind things that really matter, which is people's
Yes,
lives.
people do matter. And that's something that, I think as parents, we have 4 kids and, encouraging them to, find their own path, but always remember that you're, whatever it is, you have a responsibility to lift those up around you. Whatever little, even if something small makes a big difference, right? You don't do like something crazy, but little things that we can do to unite our community and help open up doors and opportunities for people who may not have. Maybe there's someone that doesn't have a family member that knows how to get into corporate America or be an entrepreneur or any of those things. So you open up those doors or opportunities to talk about it, and I think what you're doing is great because that's exactly, you're bringing awareness to so many of the struggles, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship and all the things that I think will help the new generation and other people out there listening, your listeners, understand, maybe how to start their journey or continue their journey.
Thank you. So where does this come from? I think earlier you were talking about like your upbringing, and can you share a little bit about, where that comes from of always being very active in the community and
Sure. Well, I think, and this is something as parents that now I try to instill, but I grew up, in the 70s in Waco. My dad was a proud Vietnam veteran. And so when he came back, he was very involved in community efforts. So in politics and in the community specifically at that time to provide resources for Latino businesses. So he started the Centex Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Waco, Texas. And then from that also TAMAC, which is the Texas Association of Mexican American Chambers of Commerce. That was in 1975. He was a co-founder along with a lot of other men in the community. I saw him. I would go to meetings with him. My mom was also recruited. He would recruit all the family to help support. It was making enchiladas for enchilada dinners or whatever it was to raise funds for a cause. So a lot, going to LULAC conventions, all those things I saw. And then in addition to that, my grandparents built the first Latino Methodist church in the Central Texas area that still stands today in Waco, down the street from Magnolia. So I come from a family of builders, and I think, that's something that I just have that I was brought up with, and then also have in my DNA, and I tell my daughters that, and then, between me and your dad and your family on that side, you are from a family of builders and community builders and uniters. So I think that's something that, sometimes it's not always easy. It wasn't an easy path for me to figure out where I was supposed to be, but where I am now is exactly
where you're supposed to be.
Yeah. And that's why I tell people too, again, this goes back to, don't think you have to have your entire life figured out when you're young, as sometimes you try something different because you're like, that doesn't interest me now. But that's okay. You try something, again, it's learning along the way as much as you can, building relationships, maintaining relationships. There's so many people that I've known for 20, 30 years that I continue to work with. Edelman worked with us even through Hispanicize, the entire time of Hispanicize. I was long gone because I couldn't manage that too. But I think that's one of the things too, is always keeping relationships, and treating people with respect, because that's also, your reputation is key wherever you go, and it will follow you.
Wow. So, definitely your roots and your origins is why building up communities is so much part of you, in your epicenter. Every time we bring our children and we're letting them see these are Latino professional leaders in our country who are running businesses, who are influencing decisions, moving economies. It's so important for them to see that and see themselves.
Yes. And even Hispanicize, though, 3 older kids, like 15, 19, and 23, they were young during Hispanicize, but they were at a lot of them. And, there were other influencers too. We laugh now because, like Spoiled Latina that's here, different influencers we see around, like all of our kids are around the same age. So several of them grew up at Hispanicize as well. But so they knew that as young kids. And I think that is important for us to show them opportunities that exist and, how to behave in business settings, but I think, that helps them just see what's out there. They're going to make their own decisions, but they understand that there are a lot of opportunities.
Yep. And to always dare to dream bigger.
Yes, dare to dream bigger is right. The little one definitely dares to dream. She's going to live in London, supposedly. But I'm like, you'd go and do what you're going to do.
She probably gets that from you because you went to Thailand.
Maybe. But I'm like, but I love that they even say that. And I think this younger generation, they're between social media and, they're exposed to a lot more than we were when we were younger. Some good, some not so great. But they see more opportunity of, what career opportunities or places to travel, go to college. And, I think it's very different.
Yeah. And Sophia was born in Beijing.
Oh, okay.
I was on assignment in China for 5 years.
Oh, my gosh. How cool.
In Angola, Africa as well. So she's had an opportunity to live in many different countries. My son, too. He can speak Mandarin.
That's beautiful. I think that's amazing to give kids the next generation the tools and, insight to what's achievable.
Yes. So can you share, what are you dreaming bigger about these days?
Well, I'm super excited about Nuestro Stories. We're have a lot of interesting projects in the works, and looking for the Nuestro Studios. I'm super excited about and really another thing that we're looking to do is there's a whole ed tech component to what we're doing, and I touched on this briefly earlier, and really helping to bring these stories to life, and through AR or using it through scanning things and seeing a historical figure stand up next to you, or Frida Kahlo can be talking. I think there's so many cool things that we're going to see, and how technology is going to impact education. So that's why I see a longer term play. But I think, what we have in front of us with Nuestro Stories, continuing to build out that database. And then also the Nuestro Studios and some of the work that's going to come out of that is super exciting. And, and I know we're talking about we're being real here.
Yes.
My business partner for all these years has been my husband. And sometimes people are like, well, how does that work?
And yes, please do tell.
And sometimes, it can be great because you have a shared mission often, when you're married, you have a shared mission and goal. And so that I think has worked well for us. Not to say that there are not times that we're like, please get out of my house or please go work somewhere else, because you have, sometimes you butt heads. But I think ultimately, if you have the same goal and then you're bringing your family into this, I think it works well. And there are times I think it's sometimes good to have little other things happening, while we focus on Nuestro Stories. I'm also, I'm a brain aneurysm survivor. Not many people know that. I suffered a brain aneurysm in January 2022. So I also speak out a lot of times about, what are the warning signs? Because, 1 in 3 people are at risk of a ruptured brain aneurysm, and they may not even realize it. So I think, finding—
What are the warning signs?
Well, I was in the middle of a Zoom call, and it was literally, I was in a Zoom call, like many of us are, and a headache came on from the front, and it felt like my head exploded. There was no other headache I'd had in my life that felt like that. And the pain started going, through my neck. My neck started stiffening. When you have a brain bleed, you have tingling in your brain. It feels like tingling is the best way to describe it. Worst headache of my life. But I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know I was at risk for a brain aneurysm. And then, luckily my husband was there. He saw kind of everything happening. It happened very quickly, from the headache to the neck pain. And then I started feeling like what I knew as stroke sort of symptoms. Like my arm started numbing, my chest started tightening. And then again, my husband was there and got me to the hospital. Within 20 minutes of the onset of those symptoms, I was getting treatment. Vomiting is also another sign. But, that happened in that moment. And, looking back, there were signs I should have paid attention to. That's one thing I think as entrepreneurs, we get so busy with working and managing everything that we're doing that we forget to pay attention to our body. So 2 weeks before that happened, I felt nauseous out of nowhere. There was no reason for me to be nauseous. I dismissed it as working too much. But several months before that, I had a pain behind my right eye, and I was like, oh, I'm working too much. I would try to put an ice pack on it, and nothing would help. So, but that was a warning sign that I was having pressure behind my eye. So I brought that up because I think in addition to us working together, something that has helped is we have passion projects of things like that we want to help raise awareness about. And I think that also helps us help the community, but then we also have other little outlets,
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I do regularly as well. It was just Brain Aneurysm Awareness Month, and I will continue to do. And I think it's important, as is mental health. That's why I talked about that earlier, and why it's important for us to talk openly about it, that it's okay to not be okay, you know?
Yes. Wow. Well, thank God that Manny was there and that you are here with us today. And maybe it happened so that you can be that advocate and to share and to ensure that other people don't ignore those signs, and help save lives.
I do feel like there are other survivors, and I think when we talk, we're like, we're here for another reason. And I think that's what we talked about, community building, and mine really is. Yes. It's something, it's not, I'm going to cry and I don't care. I think I see all these people in these like companies who are like, oh, we're here like for the community. And it's like, you can say that all day long, but what really shows me that you mean it is you actually do it. And I don't see the follow through a lot of times. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, I feel like that's why I am here. It's like there's more to do. My time is not done.
You're extraordinary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.